Allincrypto. Welcome back, guys, for what is going to be our third or fourth attempt at recording a daily market update. We are currently having some software issues. However, we have came up with a workaround, at least for the time being, and we're going to attempt to present once more the information that we had lined up for you in this morning's daily market update. We are 2 hours behind schedule now. However, the show must go on. We've got a lot of things to cover in this daily market update. As always, we're going to be starting things off with looking at the space broadly. So we're going to be looking at the Bitcoin chart on the weekly time frame. We're going to be looking at the total cryptocurrency market cap chart, which we think is going to double, very much in line with the direction we think Bitcoin is going in. We're also going to be looking at the total 2, which is everything excluding Bitcoin, total 3, everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the others, which is everything outside of the top 10 within the cryptocurrency space, market cap, which is currently around about 200 billion. We think it's going to 2 trillion. We'll look at ETPs. We'll really give you a general kind of overview on a broader time frame in regards to the direction that this space is about to go in. Because when we go to the smaller time frames, we are on the cusp, ladies and gentlemen, of something great. Bitcoin has been in a pullback since March this year. The altcoins, unfortunately, have just capitulated under Bitcoin's weakness in a very volatile manner like they do. Some altcoins giving up as much as 60%. But they will rebound hundreds of percent. And that's the opportunity we want to keep you guys hanging in there for. We'll look at a lot of things from a technical point of view. And by the end of it, you should be saying when it walks, talks, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Then we're going to be diving over to CoinShares digital asset weekly fund flows. We like to do this every Monday. CoinShares look essentially at crypto products. So whether that's the ETFs, the ETPs, not just in the US, but across the board, they look at a basket of currencies, including Australia, Brazil, or countries including Australia, Brazil, Canada, Hong Kong, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, the United States, and of course the others. And they comprise all that data and show you what kind of an appetite these products have seen. So we will be doing that and talking about Michael Saylor, who now has plans to take MicroStrategy to $1 trillion company. MicroStrategy doing very well. It's been one of the best performing assets, and it's about to become a part of, or is actually now a part of, the S&P 500. It was part of the IWM when it moves, of course, above a certain market cap. Not sure what MicroStrategy is in terms of market cap. 60 billion, 70 billion. It's not in the hundreds yet, I don't think. But if MicroStrategy became $1 trillion company, that essentially would mean that some quick maths here would mean that MicroStrategy shares per share, what are they, 100 and something today, $200, would go to about $4,000. Very interesting. We think there's some amazing plays out there. Then we'll be talking about El Salvador and, of course, some Mt.Gox news. So, as promised, let's kick things off. It's a green day. It was a green weekend for the cryptocurrency space, but Bitcoin today up 3.1%. And we've done a lot of technical work in regards to Bitcoin. And we have a number of technical things that give us confidence in regards to the direction that Bitcoin is going in. You don't bet against that. First of all, Bitcoin is very clearly and has been in an uptrend since January 2023. Remember, we entered the cryptocurrency markets after being out in 2022 in January 2023. We pivoted from bearish back to bullish. We could have played the Bitcoin dominance trade a lot better than we did. I'm the first to admit that. We're predominantly in the altcoin market because our bet is that altcoins will eventually outperform Bitcoin. But Bitcoin since then has been in an uptrend. And this hasn't been invalidated yet, even with what has seemed like a very long, boring, emotionally frustrating pullback. Bitcoin's uptrend is still very much intact. So you don't bet against the trend. That's the first technical factor that we have for you. Then, of course, we have this inverse head and shoulders. You can see this is your right or left shoulder here, your head, and then your right shoulder in a very puny, weakling manner. It's kind of showing you that it's easy to push in the direction you want it to go. Since then, we did come to all-time highs. We put a toe above it and then pull back below it in a very common fashion. We've also got a bull flag that we've really been forming since this pullback began. And, you know, just to show you how common and the kind of roadmap, and we've done this previously, that Bitcoin has ahead of it, let's look at the likes of MicroStrategy, toe above new all-time highs, pull back in a descending fashion, trend still very much in place before you see that continuation. Microsoft, not MicroStrategy, sorry, still has a broader target to the upside. The DAX was one that made target. This making target here is essentially what's going to come for Bitcoin at 151K. Just off the top of my head, I think Vanex Semiconductors great example of what Bitcoin has ahead of it. This will likely set up for some sort of continuation. But the markets look great. Bitcoin certainly looks great. And there's a number of reasons why technically we think that, on top of our sort of macro, more fundamental reasons to why we think the space is going to do well. But it's not just Bitcoin that we think is going to do well. And on the shorter time frame, Bitcoin is about to embark on an end of this pullback, or an ending of this pullback journey. You're now holding what has really held you as resistance at many occasions now in regards to this splitter in your channel. And now a support. And there was also that smaller pattern. We looked at a number of smaller patterns that takes you to 85K. So there's 4 or 5 things we're looking at on a big time frame that we think Bitcoin is going to do well as a result of. It's not just Bitcoin that's showing these signs of life. It's also the likes of total cryptocurrency market cap, which again is in a bull flag. This bull flag pattern, and it's progressing to the upside of it, ultimately is going to see you go to $4.1 trillion. Right now it's at 2 trillion. So, or 2.2 trillion. So this is going to be nearly a doubling, just under a doubling in regard to the overall cryptocurrency market cap. Of course, Bitcoin is signaling that very much so. If Bitcoin's at 64K, it going to 150 is more than a double, if my math serves me correctly, quick math. And ultimately, the total cryptocurrency market has a technical pattern that also sees that get there. When we look at the total cryptocurrency market, excluding Bitcoin, in the short term, we actually think this is going to 1.7 trillion. So this is around about doubling again. 1.8 would be a doubling. It's currently at 900 billion, going to 1.8 trillion. And then eventually we think it's going to get to 3.7. This is more of a sort of bull market prediction. You know, if the total market cap, excluding Bitcoin, get to 4 trillion, Bitcoin get to 2-3 trillion, puts you around about a $6-7 trillion market cap, which we think is achievable. Again, in a very bull flag pullback-esque manner. And the total 3, which is everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, again, a bull flag, seeing it go from 600 billion to 1 trillion. We also think that this has progressed pretty beautifully. And then, of course, when we look at others, just to throw this in here, and we look at all market caps, which is everything outside the top 10, beautiful bull flag. This has actually invalidated trend. But the important thing is it bounced where you'd expect it to bounce and is sort of, you know, broken out of its kind of bull flag, broader head and shoulders there. You know, this sees this get to potentially 2 trillion. So if total 2 gets to 3.7, that would mean everything inside the top 10, barring Bitcoin and stable coins, is likely going to be 1.7 trillion. And everything the outside could be 2. So between 9 or however many coins that is, you know, they're going to fight for 1.7 trillion. So there's lots of things that confirm the direction that we think you're ultimately going in. Miners, very similarly. Also the likes of crypto ETPs, which we're going to be talking about in more detail when we look at CoinShares flows. When we look at the likes of Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund, you know, we've got validation on 2 price targets thus far. We've been hit and made. Ultimately, you know, this is, in my opinion, likely going to lead to $175 dollar price target. It's currently at $22. This is Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund. This is Bitwise Top 10 Crypto Index. Very similar structure. We're just shy of actually making target here. And then this is 21 shares. So if these are bullish and pointing in the same direction that Bitcoin is and the total market cap, when it walketh, talketh, and quacketh like a duck, ladies and gents, it's a duck. And also when we look at miners, very positive story. And we can go on and on and on in regards to building a technical picture as to why we're as bullish as we are. However, what I want to do now is cover things perhaps a little bit more fundamentally. Lots of Bitcoin news today. We're going to be looking at the Mt.Gox news. I thought this was very, very interesting because repayments were essentially supposed to take place in October. This took place over the weekend this year. They're now going to take place in October next year. This is Grayscale Digital Large Cap, not Grayscale Digital Large Cap, from CoinShares Digital Asset Fund Flows. So we like to look at this. It comprises a lot of data. And you can see there's been, according to them, a political shift to Republicans drive a $407 million digital asset inflows. I think it's more than this. Digital asset investments saw inflows of 407 million. Last week was negative, remember, as investors' decisions have likely been more influenced by the up-and-coming US election than by monetary outlook. We think monetary outlook's more the driver. Did a great update for patrons yesterday. Do consider becoming a Patreon. We looked at global liquidity and we broke it down. We looked at M2, which is at all-time highs, which larger caps follow better than sort of general global liquidity. It's more centered around central banking. And, you know, ultimately, There's a great time we think ahead based on that. And then technically, when you sort of look at what we've just looked at, you get this kind of really good complete picture. Bitcoin saw inflows of $419 million, making it the primary beneficiary of the recent political shifts. Blockchain equities, the ETFs, saw one of the largest weekly inflows this year, totaling $34 million, likely in response to Bitcoin's recent price action. Remember, Bitcoin is that tide that still rises and sinks all ships. And ultimately, as it erects, the altcoin market will come back even harder, so to speak. And you can see multi-asset products seeing inflows. And of course, those multi-asset products are essentially what we've just looked at in regards to Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund, etc., etc. So it's a great picture that we're being painted. We're starting to see inflows coming back. Let's move on to some interesting news. This is from Michael Saylor. He talks about the road to them becoming $1 trillion company. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Saylor. I think his arguments are dumb. How many chairs are you sat on? Well, you're on one chair right now, so that means you should be all in on one asset. It doesn't quite work like that. There's horses for courses. We sit on multiple things a day. No joke intended there. And he's ultimately talking about how if they do this certain thing and Bitcoin essentially gets to $1 million a coin, MicroStrategy can essentially become $1 trillion company and the leading Bitcoin bank. Now, that would put MicroStrategy shares. Let's talk about MicroStrategy because we have that short-term bullish target that's very much playing out. That would put MicroStrategy shares currently 220. Remember, we were looking in the sort of 100. We were looking at this doubling, and look at this go. Stock market just opened today, real gap up there. Wow. You're probably looking at about a 4K target here for MicroStrategy if it ends up becoming $1 trillion company. And MicroStrategy was literally a dead company post.com crash, never recovered like the others that went on to become some of the largest companies in the world. MicroStrategy didn't, up until it reinvented itself as basically a Bitcoin holding company. There's lots of opportunities out there. We've got miners. We've got lots of things that we're very bullish on and that we ultimately think is going to do very, very well. Lark Davis also highlighting here, MicroStrategy is outperforming every other stock in the S&P 500. Crypto is going to be the fastest horse in this race. We're more heavy on crypto derivatives than we are, or crypto equities than we are Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin equities than we are Bitcoin itself. And I think, you're going to see some real flying off the handle. So amazing opportunity here. This is likely going to continue. El Salvador recently paid back $940 million of its outstanding debt. It reduced the burden that they have. IMF, of course, is going to be hating this after telling them that they were very irresponsible for loading up on Bitcoin. We love Bitcoin in many regards. We just don't believe in the Satoshi story that was told to you. I think there's similarities between how we ended up with a Federal Reserve and centralized banking and how Bitcoin is essentially going to do the same thing globally, but not on a bigger scale than what central banks did in regards to nationally. We don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. We'll do an entirely separate video on that. I'll really flesh out my thoughts on it because I think it's interesting. I think people need to pay attention to it. We're going to make money on it regardless, but that we need to be careful as a species, as a race. And there is only one race, ladies and gentlemen. It's the human race. Don't let anybody try and convince you otherwise. We're not playing World of Warcraft here. We're not orcs and goblins and things like that. It's important for us to realize what we might be getting herded into and how they might be playing the people's card, just like they did with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve always came about as the Aldrich Bill was oh no, we don't want the Wall Street in charge of central banking, so let's give it to the government and thus the people. And then the same people were entirely behind it and enabled Wall Street even further. Anyway, just some thoughts there. And the last little bit of news that I have for you guys is a notice in regards to Mt.Gox. Now, the repayments for this were supposed to take place on the 31st of October 2024. So this month, great month. And instead, it's taking place on the 31st of October next year. So it's about $3 billion worth of crypto that essentially will no longer be getting given back to creditors. The FTX repayments is something that we want because that's $16 billion of cash. It's already been sold. This is more the actual Bitcoin itself. So I think that's largely it from me, ladies and gents. When it walketh, talketh, and quacketh like a duck, it's a duck. It's a bullish environment and picture that we have moving forwards. It truly is. When we look at crypto from a technical point of view, you can't be bearish in the sort of short to mid to even more broader term. My best guess on when this market sort of tops out at the trillions of dollars of market cap that it's going to get to is on the back end of 2025. So that is it from me, ladies and gents. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. We apologize for the later video. I've had some technical difficulties, as I'm sure some of you had witnessed. However, life's all about rolling with the punches, and that is hopefully what we've done. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.